teaching style. Perhaps you're teaching philosophy. Thank you for starting that. Again, welcome to Organizational Models in Online Education. This is Michael Wilder, and we're covering the aspects of navigational structure. I tend to liken it as almost like remote control devices for your TV set. And you can kind of see the one on the left is very full-featured, a lot of different things there. And the one on the right is very simple. And each of them has strengths and weaknesses. By a show of hands, if you would just click on your hand icon there, just to kind of show me how many prefer the remote control at home that looks like the one on the left. All right, just about everybody, it seems like. See if I can. All right, great. I see. And does anybody at this point have would prefer something that was a lot more similar there to the one on the right? Anybody want to try? Yeah. So it all depends. Everyone has kind of a personal preference there as far as which is which. But what to an extent, you have to be careful of visual clutter. And I think that when our students are in our classes, they only need to really see what's important, not necessarily everything that's possible. So does this look like anybody's office here? Does this look similar, look familiar? And the same is true as far as just having this concept of a cognitive overload, that if we give too much, that the likelihood that they may not know anything or learn anything or just basically get lost. So the point of today's session is to kind of keep an eye on that aspect of your course, your navigation structure, to see if in fact it may have something that is not necessary. So before I go any further, can I get a show of hands for how many people are actually teaching online right now? And Star, I see. Anybody else teaching online? Okay. Star, if you could type in the chat window down below, if you could, are you teaching through the Office of Online Education either a fully online course or a hybrid course? Wonderful. If you're teaching through the Office of Online Education, you'll be either teaching fully online or a hybrid course, and usually you are paired with an instructional designer who will set you up with a course template, a shell, that contains a pared down version of the navigational structure. Whereas if you are teaching either a web supplement course, or outside of even not teaching necessarily a course itself that is matriculated, you may end up with a default template. And the default template navigation structure looks very much like this. And you can see I call it the kitchen sink. It has just about everything that there is. And I kind of I see it as being very similar to that remote control that has all of those different types of buttons. And from a student perspective, there are some scary items here that they don't know, and there are items here that they may never be used by the instructor, and so are sort of useless. So if you are teaching again as a online and using a web campus shell as a supplement and not fully online or hybrid, you may end up with something that looks like this. Now, let me ask, how many here know what all of these tools are? Does anybody? Yeah, Rex, Alice, Kevin? The instructional designers, Homer, yes? So there are a number of them that are unknown. And so if you're handed a course shell that is the default, really what you're getting is a stock model from the company, and often, we're talking about Blackboard, really is produced by programmers, perhaps, without necessarily knowing the pedagogical approach of your class. And so the expectation is that you will be customizing this. We haven't really published this information quite widely, but the reality is that when you get a default template like that, the expectation is that you, the instructor, will make some educated decisions about which one of these tools do you really want to use. For example, how many of you have ever used the chat tool? Can I get a show of hands on that? Yeah, Rex, Homer? Mm-hmm. Jennifer? And often my experience is that the chat tool is often left in online courses and yet never used, or not very often used. So some of you might be using them. How about the SCORM tool? Can anybody off the top of their head tell me what SCORM means? Yeah, star, Rex. What does SCORM stand for? Anybody know? So anybody want to volunteer to type that into the window in the chat window down below? No takers? Well, that's actually great, Star. Yeah, it's actually, I'll go ahead and type it in there. It's a shareable, if I can spell. Yeah, shareable content object reference model. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Alice. Perfect. So, and Star, can you tell me very briefly why it's so awesome? Sorry to put you on the spot. I appreciate you participating. Allows PPTs to be gradable, yes. Very cool. Incorporates video. SCORM is actually a standard developed by the Department of Defense so that content can be moved from one learning management system to another. That's in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but basically it's a way of developing content in such a way that it isn't necessarily tied into one learning management system or another. The content can be transferred from one place to another. The problem is that not many people know how to develop an SCO, a SCORM object, and as a result it is often neglected. And yet many courses here at UNLV still have that SCORM link. And I would say that the proportions of which we have even here in our session today is pretty indicative of the rest of the university. The majority of instructors really never use it. And yet, amazingly, I see this link in courses all the time. Let's see. How about the media library? Has anyone ever used the media library in one of their courses? If I can get a volunteer to say, to give me a green check mark or to say yes on the window below. Jennifer? Is that a no, Jennifer? Alice, is that a yes? No? Yeah. And again, so a media library, we kind of wonder what is a media library. That media library is kind of a holdover from back in the days of low bandwidth. And thank you, Jennifer. It's a holdover from low bandwidth where people actually had to transmit heavy content like video or PDFs or large image files on a CD. I don't know if you remember what those things are. Those CDs or DVDs, which actually may have carried large media files, and then students would actually put them into their own individual computer. And so, if you wanted that content to be available within a web CT, a web campus course, you actually instructed students to now put the CD or DVD into the drive, and then they would click on Media Library and get access to it. So it really is kind of an obsolete holdover. I don't think anyone is using that anymore. So again, this is just an example of some of the items that are currently showing up in a typical web campus default shell, and yet we are never really using it. And in fact, many people don't know what it is. And so ultimately what happens is that our students get confused and they're clicking on these things and they're going, well, what is that? I have no idea what that is. Here is the complete list of tools that are available in Web Campus. And you can see I've got them all turned on right now. How many of you have actually used the Goals tool? Can I get a show of hands or a green check mark? Star? Yes? Anybody else? Well, Star, you definitely win the gold star of the day for being the person that uses most of the tools here. Many of these are not ever used. And from behind the scenes as an instructional designer here at the Office of Online Education, I go into courses all the time and I look and I see what actually are they using. And while these may be available to students in Web Campus, they're often never implemented. And so they're really just a source of confusion. Can anybody tell me what the advantage of the Who's Online feature? I think there's only one advantage of using Who's Online. This question is open to anybody. Alice, Rex, Kevin, why would you use Who's Online? No takers. Okay. Oh, good. Yes. Thank you, Alice. You're able to locate other people who are signed on to Web Campus. So it really is a tool to allow students to chat with each other without you setting up a chat room. So if it is set up properly from the student's end and your end, students can actually get online and see if another student is in Web Campus, not even necessarily in your course, and allow them to communicate with each other. So if you want your students to be able to see whether if you're online, whether other students in the class are online, that Who's Online feature actually is kind of nice. But again, it has to be, the students have to turn that on themselves, and you might actually have to train them how to do that. So again, if you look at all of these different tools and you see that some of them are highly used, of course in most cases you have your assessments and your assignments, you have your syllabus of course, learning modules, discussions, mail, things like that that are essential. You also have a number of them that are pretty rarely used. SCORM, for example, the media library. Well, media library is good. Local content is rarely used. So let's chat for a second about what is the best approach. What would be tools that your department might use in an online course? What would you take away? And if you could just type in a couple different tools into the chat window for your department, why would you select those? Can you type in a couple? I'll go back to the previous screen so you can take a look at those and say, okay, these are the ones I would use. So I'm inviting you, Daniel, Homer, Ruby, Star, to go and tell me which ones you think would be absolutely necessary. Thank you, Homer. English, learning modules, and mail. Ruby, thank you. Assignments, calendar, web links, Star, calendar, learning modules, SCORM, mail. Assessments, assignments, and web links. Yes. So I guess the question that I have next is, would you say that there's a one-size-fits-all set of tools for your course. Could the Office of Online Education, for example, create a navigation structure that would suit everyone? You think that that makes sense? Could we do that? Yes? No? Nice. Alice is disapproving. I see Star disapproving. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a rhetorical question, obviously. If we were to create one, thank you, Homer. If we were to create one navigational structure for the entire campus, even if we did pare down some of the tools, more than likely there would be individuals, instructors, that would have a different educational approach, a different teaching strategy, a different philosophy. I'm going to go through some examples here in just a moment that give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And so really what I'm trying to do here in this session is to provide you with some of the freedom to think about what is going to be the most useful for you to use the tools that are important to you and to get rid of the ones that don't work. And not only that, but to be able to give you the possibility of adding others that are not even in this list. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to go first and kind of demonstrate what some of the different approaches have been in terms of navigational structure. And here's again the kitchen sink. And before I move any further, can anybody tell me how is this current list organized? Thank you, Dan. Yes, Homer. Very good. Ruby. Yes, it's organized alphabetically, right? And certainly that isn't necessarily an intelligent way to present educational content. In terms of the way that you teach, you don't start with your assessments, right? You don't have assessments before assignments. And so it's by default it's set up to be alphabetical, which is kind of, you know, is a nice way to present it to us from the company, but the company later on, the company that creates these initial setups, isn't necessarily thinking the way that we would as educators. So here's one of the attempts by the Office of Online Education. We've created a template, and we've done two things. One is that we've reorganized. You can see that we've reorganized the tools here so that they're a little bit more organized based upon the way that we teach. We start off with the syllabus. We might have some communication tools, announcements, discussions. Then we begin into learning modules, assignments, assessments. Usually, personally, I often will move learning modules much higher. I'll move that above discussions. I'm thinking myself that when I'm teaching, I would like to do my presentation phase first and then have my discussion phase, and then we can get into assignments and assessments. Personally, I like to move my mail tools down to the bottom. All the communication tools come underneath the presentation of information. But that's just me. I also want to point out some of the resources that are at the bottom that are available to students, such as in my tools. We've got some online education resources. We've got a link to the Academic Success Center, UNLV libraries, and Web Campus support. And you'll notice that those are definitely not available in a stock setup template. Here's an example of a change in the theme. It was very colorful there. So here's a case where someone has gone in and fiddled with the colors, but I think they're perhaps a little bit too vibrant. I don't know if you agree with me on this one. It might be a little bit too vibrant to. Rex is laughing at this one. That is very common, actually. I mean, we pretty frequently have to go in and say, you know, yeah, that's great, but it might be a little bit too bright. You don't want to bring everyone's eyes to the navigation structure. You want them to use the navigation structure as a tool to get around your course. But then you want them to look at the content, right? So I try to go with subtle, muted tones, not the really bright ones. Here's an example from Blackboard's course sites. Course sites, if you haven't been there before, is a free a learning management system for educators. Anyone can actually go there and get their own account, and you can teach up to 5 courses at course sites. I'm putting in the URL there. Something that I found really nice. Certainly, we don't want everyone to migrate off of Web Campus and move over to course sites, but something that I thought was a good example was that by default, when an educator gets a new course, gets a blank course, they can choose from a number of different templates for their navigation structure. Here, for example, is if I were to choose the traditional structure, by default, the navigation shows like this. And you can see it's very similar to what we have currently with announcements, syllabus, instructor information, content, assignments, etc. Whereas here's another one that's module-based. So instead of it being, I'm going to go back one. Instead of it being content, let's see if I can actually use my pointer. I'm using my mouse there. You can see that we've got content and assignments and tests and quizzes, whereas in the module base, it starts with modules and helpful materials and discussions. So we've got, there's a module-based. Here's another that is chapter-based. For example, if you were teaching really to the book, so you've got chapter materials, resources, etc. So there are a lot of different ways that you can organize your content, not just one way. Here's week-based. Okay, so weekly materials. Here's one if you're a lecturer. If you lecture and you want to present your information based upon lectures. And discussion-based. So you've got discussions. It really is, the whole course is really centered around discussions. Can anybody think of any educational theory-based strategies for teaching? Can you think of any of those that you might use? Here's, for example, here's activity-based also. I'm not quite there yet, so you could base it upon problem-based, certainly. Thank you, Kevin. Here's project-based. So you have your students approach the course based upon the projects they have to accomplish. Here's the experiential learning, which is very project-based, problem-based, as Kevin says. So you can start to, really think about what is your educational theory, your teaching philosophy, and apply that to how you construct your course. Here's another one, constructivist method of constructing your course, so that students go in and they kind of contribute themselves through perhaps a wiki or a blogs or a groups or journals. Okay, so that they're actually building the course as you go. You provide a framework and they construct it. Cooperative learning, perhaps. Maybe everything is based upon groups. We also have a science. Now, of course, I mean, we talk about this all the time here in the Office of Instructional Design, that something that is taught perhaps in the humanities is going to be a different approach from a science, math approach perhaps to teaching. What about labs, for example? So the way that you teach is really going to affect the way that you organize your course, and the navigation structure is really just one manifestation of how you organize your course. Here's another approach using Web 2.0, for example. Perhaps you're using Twitter, or you're using Facebook, or Delicious, or any number of Web 2.0 tools. You could perhaps build them directly into your content, into your navigation structure, and have your students get access to them. I'll talk about how you could do that even in our current version of Web Campus in just a little bit. Here's the wackiest one I found, and that was an expedition-based model. That is, I assume that the students will as part of the approach to the class, they'll actually go on an expedition and travel, I don't know, down the Nile or something like that as they go through the course. So certainly a different approach to how you would teach a course and how you would structure everything. So in summary, what I really wanted to, this is the heart of the matter, and that there is no one-size-fits-all structure. Certainly the Office of Online Education can provide some customization for you. We'll do our best to create a good model, a good template to start with. Ultimately, however, you may want to look at how you're teaching, what your teaching philosophy is, and what is appropriate for the subject itself, and find a good model for presenting information. Of course, most of all is really to avoid any kind of visual clutter and cognitive overload. Don't present anything more than what you really need. Otherwise, we're just confusing our students. Definitely organize the way you teach. If you are a constructivist, you'll be teaching differently than someone else that teaches project-based or problem-based. And for goodness sakes, I think it's best we customize those links. So my next question is, if you would choose either A or B, have you ever tried to customize your course navigation to meet your educational needs? If you'll select A or B there. Thank you, Alice and Rex. Daniel, Jennifer, anybody else? Star? Great, all right, thank you. Kevin, could you show that? I guess I suppose I could do that too. I'll go ahead and publish the results. So we've got, most of you have great, thank you. Most of you have actually done that before. That's great. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and we'll walk through some of that process some more of how to customize your navigation links in Web Campus. And Kevin, if you will push out the handout. I've got a handout here that you can save. If this is all old hat to you, that's fine. Thank you for attending. But Kevin is pushing out right now a customize _links.pdf document. You could go ahead and save that if you're interested. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and go through a demonstration, hoping that I'm still logged into Web Campus. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to share my screen now so you can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, can everybody see the Web Campus course that I'm now working in? Thank you, Alice. Good. Thank you, Jennifer, Rex. Appreciate it. So I'm currently in just a typical Web Campus shell, and you can see that the navigation structure is the default setting. So if I want to, this is what the students see. If I want to get rid of some of these, if I want to hide, let's just go ahead and start by hiding them. I'm going to go to either the Teach or the Build tab. I tend to go to the Build tab in particular and go down to Manage Course. And under Manage Course, I can actually hide some of the items in the navigation structure on a temporary basis. Maybe I want to be able to have those links there for myself but not show them to my students. I can go to Course Menu, and under Course Menu, there are all of the current tools that are available. And if I wanted, for example, to hide SCORM, I could just simply click on Hide Link, and it now is hidden. And if I come back over to the navigation structure on the left, you can see there's a big bold H. That means that from the student's perspective, that is no longer visible. They don't see it. So there's a good, easy way to just simply hide them temporarily. And if later on I want to go ahead and bring them back again, all I have to do is go to the Build tab or the Teach tab, go down to Designer Tools, Manage Course, and go to Course Menu. And if I want to show that again, I can just click on Show Link. Pretty simple. Now what if I just want to take them out of there altogether? All I have to do is go to the same place, go to the Build tab, Manage Course, and Tools. And here are all of the tools. You can see they're all currently checked. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the local content, the SCORM. Again, maybe you use these, but I have honestly never seen anybody actually using the student tools, but that's up to you. Maybe I'll turn off goals. So I can turn off a few of these and then save that, and immediately they come out of the navigation structure for me and for the students. All right, next I can also change the order that these are in. Again, as you remember before, by default they come in, they're placed here alphabetically, which really doesn't reflect my teaching philosophy or the needs of my course at all. So I might want to move some things, certainly, such as assessments underneath assignments. You know, typically we get assessments underneath the assignments. So I'm going to go ahead and click on assessments, and then to the left of assignments there is sort of an up arrow with two bars, and I'll say move selected below. And once I do that, now assessments are underneath assignments. Okay, I'll try that again. If I want to move learning modules above assignments, I'm going to click on the text box, checkbox to the left of learning modules, and then come up above assignments and click on these two arrows to here and say move selected above. And you can see that automatically that changes in your navigation structure. And lastly, if I want to add a link to something else outside of the system, I would be careful about it, of course, but be thoughtful about linking to outside areas. You don't want to throw in 100 of them. Be selective about what you're doing. Maybe, for example, you have a resource that you use every day in the course that you want students to go to, and you didn't necessarily want them to have to click on a link within a module. You know, maybe they go to a different module every week. You'd have to put that link back in there. So you could potentially add a link into your own course navigation on a semi-permanent basis to a resource that's outside of Web Campus. Now, I don't know about you, but once I learned that, that was a major revelation. So here's how you do it. Here's under the Build tab and Manage Course. You can see that I have a custom link, Add Custom Link button under Course Tools. I also have the same thing for the student links. I'd have to go back and add in some of the student resources for that to show. But if I wanted to add a custom link in the Course Tools, I just simply click on Add Custom Link, and the second box, a second window pops open. So maybe I could add a link to the Office of Online Education. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And you'll see that it has a maximum number, stopping me there, of characters that you can actually type into the title. So you've got to think about that. And then the URL, of course, I simply copy and paste it out of a browser so that I don't have any errors there. I can also add an icon. Now, an icon in this case is 20 by 20 pixels. So you've got to really open up Photoshop or something like that. You can save it as a JPEG, a GIF, or a PNG file. 20 by 20 pixels. You can create that in Photoshop and then browse to where that would be in your on your computer itself. And once you're all done, you save it. At that point, it actually I'll go ahead and paste something in there. It actually becomes an icon in your navigation structure. Here it is, right over here. So that is actually a very powerful way of customizing your navigation structure, not just hiding links, not just removing links that are unnecessary, reorganizing them, but actually adding in features into Web Campus that are not currently there. Like I say, I think that's quite powerful. All right, let's see. I see Dan and Star have a couple questions. Star, your question: are the student resources, library, academic success center, online ed tabs always included in the course? No, they are not. Only if you're using the online education template are those available. If you get one of the default templates, they are not there. And so basically we've added those in there, and we'd be happy to help you add those or use the online education template as well. Yep, thank you, Alice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this and come back to the whiteboard. And that ends my my demonstration. But if you have any other questions, again, Star and Dan have asked some. If anybody else, Ruby or Homer, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type those in now. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much. We have an evaluation for this presentation, which is definitely very welcome if you would. Kevin's question is, will the new Blackboard have these options? And I think that's a great question, Kevin. Again, if we could, see, let me go ahead and type that URL in before I answer that question. Type that in so that the participants can go ahead and fill out the evaluation. So I think that's the one. Yep, sure is. Thank you. If you go ahead and fill out the evaluation, let us know what other presentations might be interesting to you, and we'd really appreciate it. Jennifer, we're all going to be moving over to Blackboard Learn in the fall of 2013. From what I've seen, what I remember about Blackboard is it's very customizable as well, and probably will have a different process. And I can't imagine that they would remove the feature to link to outside resources. Jennifer, do you have any input in that regard? Is it still as customizable? And while she's yes, thank you. Much easier. Thank you, Alice. Certainly, we want to think about that as we move to Blackboard Learn fall 2013. What do we want it to look like? What should those templates look like? What do we want to stay with the stock model for years and years before we figure out we can customize it, or should we go ahead and start thinking about what do we want this learning management to look like? Can we take control of it ourselves and make it something that suits our needs? All right, that concludes my presentation today. Thank you so much for being here today and your participation. Just want to let you know that to make sure when you leave, thank you, Ruby. When you leave, if you would go up to the drop-down menu across the top of your computer there under Help, there is a Leave Session, and if you